Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Working with Children and Young Persons conference, and now our sixth presentation with Amrita Ahluwalia.
That was perfect. Yeah. Hi there, John. It's nice to be here.
Thank you. A warm welcome to online events. We really appreciate you being with us today.
Not a problem. That's good. I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, great. And let me just say your title to kind of set us in context for our presentation, Putting Children and Young People in the Driving Seat. I know a lot of practitioners have been looking forward to your presentation, really looking forward to hearing about the work that you guys have been doing in terms of consultation. But before we get into all the information and the details about the presentation, because we're online, it's nice to get a sense of where you are. And would it be okay to ask you about your geography? Where are you?
Absolutely. Yeah. So at the moment, we are in an old building, kind of in central Edinburgh,
Mm-hmm.
which is where we're based, and I'm in kind of this room that's at the top of the building because it's quite cold at the moment, and we've got lots of heaters on. And Glenn, who will be joining us later on, who's one of the trustees of our board, is kind of on the other room on standby. So that's kind of where we are.
Lovely. Yes, so it's a bit chilly where you are, just gradually warming up in that room.
It is, yeah, mostly thanks to heaters, rather than the world. But yeah, no, it's chilly, but crisp and fresh.
Sounds good. Yes, and I can see Glenn is in the chat room. Fantastic. So a warm welcome
Yes,
to Glenn, and we will see him more towards the end of our hour together for some
yeah,
Q&A. Yeah. And a warm welcome to everyone who's joining us on the website too. It's really great to have you here with us, and um, it's lovely those of you who've been with us all day. And if you're just coming in, it's great to have you too. And if you want to get into the chat room, I know, Amrita, you're looking forward to some questions and comments. You can see the chat room, so you'd be up
yeah.
for responding. And if anybody's struggling to get into the chat, Saz has just put her email in there, so pop Sandra an email and she will give you a little bit of support. And if you're not in the chat room, please don't worry. It's not an obligatory part of our experience. You can enjoy the conversation, and we're really pleased to have you as part of the event. So yeah, great. And while Amrita and I are kind of getting started, if anybody wants to pop their location into the chat room, it'd be nice to get a sense of where you are, where we're spread out.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So Amrita, what about you? What are the what's been your professional journey that's kind of led you to this project and this work? Would it be okay to ask you about that?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's really that's a lovely question. So I'm probably at kind of more at the beginning of my professional journey. I'm still a student at the moment, and I started to work with People Know How shortly after they were founded, and I was their first member of staff. Which was amazing. And at that time, I was an organizational development intern. So I worked on kind of policy and kind of developing strategies sort of for the future of the organization. And as part of that work, it became apparent that kind of social consultation and social research was going to play a really big part of what the charity was about. And from there, we also knew that we really wanted to start with work with children and young people as well. So I sort of developed a plan for a consultation with young people that would try something quite new. And then I'm really privileged to be able to have stayed on and continue to work on that piece of work, which I will kind of hopefully explain in the course of the presentation. So that's kind of a little bit about me and kind of how I've been working with People Know How as well.
Great. Oh, it's lovely to get a sense of how that's emerged for you, I guess. Yeah, it
Yeah.
sounds like you've got an interest in organisation and in people too, and like those kind of consultation processes. Or...
Yes. So do you mean in terms of the people that we're consulting with or other members of the team? Or
Yeah, like the kind of client groups that I suppose you're starting with children and young people, and
yes. Yeah, so we're starting quite broad and always have had an intention to do that. and then kind of focus down on specific issues when it becomes apparent through the work that we do that that's kind of where collectively people want the focus to be on. So we're starting quite broadly with young people, and we're kind of just focusing on one age group rather than one particular issue at the moment. From there in future, we hope to kind of work with wider groups of people and different kind of subsets of communities on different issues that people come to us feeling that need further explanation and exploration as well.
Oh, that's lovely. Thank you, Amrita. That makes a lot of sense. Feels really clear. And as you're kind of introducing yourself to us, I can see some locations in the chat room. Yeah, so someone in Edinburgh, not far from you, I guess, and someone in Bonn, a little bit further, and London and Nottingham. So lovely to get a sense of.
Yeah, no, that is.
Spread around. And I've been really looking forward to your presentation because I think often as practitioners we might be approaching client groups with an idea of what that client group needs, I guess, and that's full of our own assumptions and the kind of work that we want to do as practitioners. But you're doing it the opposite way around. You're really going to the client group or an age group and saying, what do you need? What is it you want?
Yes, exactly. So we're quite a diverse kind of group of people. So for instance, our trustees are very diverse and come from different sort of backgrounds, some of which have been practitioners, which is very useful, and their expertise are invaluable. But there are also kind of other professions coming from kind of marketing and from kind of architecture, law. It's very diverse, and that goes the same with our volunteers as well. So we kind of wanted to bring together lots of different expertise to see where we could get with a wider focus, basically, and kind of invest more in starting from a broader understanding rather than a specific focus, and seeing where that would get us, basically. And it looks really kind of very hopeful at the minute, and it's really exciting. So hopefully that kind of makes a little bit of sense with how we're going with it.
Yeah, like a diverse expertise in your group, I guess, allows for other ideas to emerge, or maybe a more holistic service to emerge as well.
Definitely. I think what we're trying to do is sort of put all our energy into sort of nurturing the process of actually consulting and actually being supportive with ideas from kind of from a whole range of sort of kind of stakeholders and client groups, starting with children and young people, and our focus is ages 13 to 15 at the moment, and kind of really supporting them to input into what we're asking them, which is what kind of a service do young people need at the moment in Scotland, and then taking that through to an endpoint where we've actually worked in collaboration with them to actually come up with an idea that is realistic and we can put into practice. And that is it's very challenging, but it's also really kind of energizing and interesting at the same time. So it is really exciting.
Yeah, so you're taking like 13 to 15, so a very specific age group, I guess, and they're going to have quite specific needs, perhaps, or that's the questions.
Yes, so the choice about age group emerged from kind of a literature review, and that's also part of our ethos, is kind of to understand as best we can all the work that has been done so far, and pull it together and try and make sense of it as a whole, because a lot of research, with very good reason, has a narrow focus, whether it's by issue, topic, kind of field, or age group. It's all quite focused, but it is very difficult to get a sense of the whole picture. And we found from doing this that a lot of the either consultation or a lot of the issues miss out this particular age group. But it's also an age where things can go wrong for young people. So it's a difficult transitional age in schools, for example, and it can be an age where the views of those young people are either slightly more difficult to access, or not quite as kind of integrated into some of the practice or the policy development.
Right, that's fascinating about that age group. So is that something to do with they've left what we call in Scotland primary school?
Yes.
But they're not quite integrated into the high school system, or yeah.
Yeah, no, I think it is related. Again, a lot of the research picture overall is a little patchy because of all the kind of the focus, which is why it's so important to put what we've got together and access it as a whole as well. But it does seem to be that there's something really kind of it is a difficult thing to do to move from primary school to secondary school, and it can be an age where a lot of young people have to kind of make a massive transition in their lives, and that can be a point where it's difficult to either for organizations and for the adults around them to tap into what they're thinking and where they're at. But also it might be difficult for them to kind of express or understand how to access support for different things as well.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, Amrita. That
Right.
makes a lot of sense, and so many questions on that. But I guess some of what you want to kind of bring for us today is about how you've done the consultation. Is that right? And kind of think about perhaps what your team has learned in that process. Or I know you've got some slides too. So yeah.
Yeah. I was just thinking it might be helpful to kind of start with some of the slides just about the organization and what we're trying to do. So if we could maybe go to the fourth slide, actually. So that's the who are we slide, and I can just kind of quickly talk through that.
Okay, let me just pop that up on the screen. So that should be viewable now. Yeah.
Perfect. All right. So we'll basically kind of, hopefully this has come across in some of the things I've said already. But we're a social innovation charity, and what we're aiming to do is to support people broadly to kind of discover their strengths and assets. So that's how we think about the processes that we're developing and the projects that we're doing, is that overall the thing that hangs them together is this focus on people being able to contribute to the max, basically. And again, as I've sort of talked about a little, our initial focus is on working with children and young people, specifically that age group at the start. But from then we hope to use the things that we've learned broadly about the kinds of processes that help people to kind of express their ideas and contribute, and apply them to lots of different either ages or different issues or subsets of people. So it's quite, our ambitions are broad.
They are broad, but exciting as well. Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of glue behind it all. Okay. And if I could kind of just quickly go over our missions and values, because that a lot of the language from those things, our missions and values, we've kind of embedded in a lot of what we do as well. Okay. So
just put that slide up on the screen. There we are. Yeah.
Perfect. So our overall mission is broad, and it is to innovate positive change by believing in people. And more specifically, our values kind of introduce the ways in which we hope to do that, which is by valuing people's potential, investing in the creative and dynamic processes, the kind of things that it does take to support people and engage with people and encourage like co-production with different kinds of people, and also tailoring those processes for our audience at the time as well, and having the knowledge to do that. We're also committed to meaningful action, so we're very clear on the fact that all of the kind of consultation, social research processes that we do undertake, it's really important that they end in something, so that there is something that we can take forward, either by developing a service or a project idea that will address specifically what we've kind of found out, or by informing kind of further research and information and knowledge. So it's really important to us that we're very specific and clear about the change that we're making as well. And lastly, we're really keen on innovative solutions, and we think that kind of all of the things that I've mentioned, so by supporting people to engage with us in a much more meaningful way, will kind of come together into kind of a solution that addresses the problem in a new way as well. So hopefully that kind of articulates some of what we're kind of all about as well.
Yeah, no, it sounds really clear. Like there's something about finding new ways forward, and not just doing what's always been done, and not just consulting either, but meaningful action, but new.
Definitely, yeah. Definitely. I think it is really challenging and it takes a lot of time and resource as well to do that in a way that can kind of channel what feeling is of the people that will benefit in the end. But it is really important, and that's kind of what we're about. So yeah, it definitely is about finding something new and tapping into that.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And I'm going to kind of make reference throughout this kind of presentation to both the consultation work that we're doing with young people, but also to another idea that we've had, which is for a People Know How college. And it should hopefully also become clear how the two are kind of interconnected and support each other. So I'll just say a little bit just now about the college idea. And then we might come back to it kind of later as well. So the idea behind that is that it kind of gives us a framework where we're giving often young people, young volunteers, kind of skills and support and a learning environment to develop the kinds of skills that they need to take part and kind of facilitate the consultation processes that we're keen on. So it's basically putting young volunteers and community organizations that might be under-resourced together so that the organizations have the resources that they need to address kind of issues that they know they face or they know communities might face, or questions they want to ask, but they don't actually have the time or the people, the human resources to actually achieve that. And it gives the volunteers kind of support. So it's hopefully a solution in itself to how these kinds of processes might actually happen and be accessible for a lot more communities and a lot more organizations as well. So I will kind of make reference to that part as well.
Right, okay. So it's a way of bringing together resources to train young people to meet challenges, or...
Yeah, so it's to train young people to actually carry out social research, and there are different facets. So it would be around community development work, but also community research and consultation. So we'd be giving people, so the students or volunteers involved, kind of a training program and a qualification that gives them skills and confidence. And sets them on a way either down a personal path or a career path in this area. But it also kind of connects them with people who really do need those expertise. And kind of takes both through a process where you can develop sort of new solutions to various social issues by applying the same kind of ethos again and again.
Yeah, okay. So the young person gets trained, perhaps in social consultation, and then finds a way forward, like a kind of new way of doing things, and could train to have a capacity for that too, or...
Yeah, so it would be that's pretty much exactly it. So so a young person would start to be involved in the college, and they would have access to different training inputs. We're working at the moment on putting together kind of a program that that draws from different educational institutions. So lots of different kinds of modules around the sort of thing that we're trying to do. So it might be modules around specifically consulting with young people, about listening to young people, about active listening, about how to, you know, ethical, all the different things that it takes to kind of put this sort of work together. And then they would be able to apply it to kind of a project that they might be assigned to, or they might be needed in, that a community has kind of approached us with. Either around asking a question, posing a question to a group of stakeholders that they work with, or around kind of addressing a specific need or issue that they'd like to kind of flesh out and design a service to address.
Well, they sound like fantastic skill sets for young people to be training and developing that would stick with them their whole lives, I guess, and in a range of different roles. All you know, ethics and listening and project management. Yeah, very, very important skills.
Absolutely, yeah, we hope so very much. Yeah. Perfect. Would it be maybe helpful now to kind of talk a bit more in depth about the consultation as a process, and kind of discuss maybe some of the sort of ethos and thinking behind doing that?
Yeah, I think that would be great. Let's do that for a bit. Yeah.
Perfect. I've got a couple of slides which we could put up as I kind of chat about it. This would be around the kind of consultation why slide, starting there.
Okay, let me just... I've got that. Yep, I'll pop that on the screen now. There we go.
That's perfect. So the kind of the motivation for the consultation that we're doing is that we do think that young people have a lot to say and should be heard about the kind of support that they might need. And we also think that perhaps what they feel they need and what is actually available might not always match up as would be ideal. So from this kind of standpoint, our aim with the consultation is to take young people through a process that supports them to design a support service that reflects their views within the consultation. So that's the kind of thinking behind it and the why for kind of what we're doing. To give kind of a bit more information, the next slide sort of fleshes out how that's actually happening as well. So our focus is through this kind of meaningful and dialogic process in the consultation. So, and I'm sure a lot of the audience, I got a chance to kind of catch a couple of the events this morning, and I believe a lot of the audience are practitioners and kind of have backgrounds in counselling, which is fantastic. And I think sometimes consultation processes have a lot to learn from that kind of work, because it's really easy to design a consultation so that you are asking a question, you're getting the answers, and then you're turning the answers into something. But that part, the end part, which is possibly the most important part, doesn't always ever kind of get opened to kind of discussion with the people that you talked to in the first place. So we were really conscious of this, and we were trying to kind of embed the sort of things that might help sustain kind of ongoing discussion about it. So in the workshops, what we do is we kind of start with one group of young people and we ask them kind of questions about the challenges and the sort of things that prevent well-being for young people in Scotland today. And then we come back a week later, having sort of worked through what they've told us, think about it a little bit, digest it ourselves, and we basically then further consult them on what we think and how we could make sense of this. And then further down the line, the actual development of the service itself is also in kind of collaboration with young people again, so that it is as kind of dialogic as it can be, and we're not just going away and deciding what happens with all these views as well.
That sounds so important, that you're not just taking the views and making a decision on them, but you're continually in that process right into the development of the service. And
absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And that was really important for us to maintain that link throughout, so that it is and we think that's the thing that kind of makes it really meaningful as well. And yeah, so our main modes of consultation are through workshops and online participation as well. So the formats are quite simple, and it's both face-to-face, and the online supports that by providing a different kind of space that young people can share ideas as well, both whether or not they've been in a workshop and whether or not that's the way that they've accessed us as well. So there are those two modes. And kind of the next slide sort of elaborates on what we're actually asking young people in terms of the kinds of questions and kind of discussions that we'd like to have. And it's very much about kind of the challenges and opportunities to making improvements in young people's lives and creating that positive change. But it's also kind of guided and structured in a really open way by Scottish government policy. And I know not everyone is in Scotland who's watching today. So I'm going to explain just a little bit about what that is and how we're using it. A key Scottish policy is getting it right for every child, which is abbreviated to GERTHEC. And what we're doing with that is, throughout this particular policy, there are well-being indicators that are identified. So it's kind of 8 kind of simple words that sum up what every child should be in Scotland. And it's words like safe, healthy, achieving, nurtured, active, respected, responsible, and included. So that's all 8. And this is kind of where policy acts, where kind of public organizations are at. It's where schools are at. This is the framework now. And we're using those kind of words as discussion points and starters about what they mean for young people, about the kinds of things that young people need in their lives to make them feel those ways, but also about where things might be lacking and where the holes might be, even in that sort of list of handy 8 indicators. Is there anything missing? And we take the young people through a process of having a broad discussion about that through to a more specific discussion on, well, what's the most important thing that we could do now to help kind of bridge the gaps, and what could we actually be doing to help kind of better support young people's well-being. So that's kind of what the process is about as well.
Right. So, and some prioritizing in there too, I guess.
Yes.
Like what would make the most difference? So where should we start? Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's important for us that the prioritizing is done by young people and not us as an organization, so that it's as little a kind of our process of deciding and choosing, and it's much more kind of their collective process of deciding and choosing.
Yeah. So even that, in terms of the priorities, it's what do the young people, what do they see as their priorities? Yeah. So
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. No. Absolutely. Yeah. So in terms of kind of other aspects of the consultation process, there are kind of some more specific things about kind of where we're consulting with young people, kind of so it's Edinburgh, Mid Lothian and East Lothian. So those are the 3 kind of local authorities. But there's more information available on our website if anyone's interested in more of the specific kind of details about that. And I'll share my kind of email address at the end of this presentation as well, if anyone has specific questions, or in the kind of discussion feed, anything that they'd like me to answer now as well.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, that's a very generous invite that you be up for that dialogue, I guess, and hearing from
Absolutely, yeah.
people. Yeah.
No, absolutely.
Great.
Perfect. Maybe we've got one slide that kind of gives us an overview of the process as a whole just now. It's the blue slide that's got the kind of "What are we doing" title.
Got it. Okay. Here it is.
Perfect. And basically, why I kind of wanted to share that slide is it's a really important kind of aspect of what we're doing, that we're very kind of open and clear and transparent with the young people we're working with about what the process entails and what we can achieve as well. So it means that we're kind of managing their expectations, but also we're being realistic. And trying as best as possible to kind of convey the real context. So either the real policy context or what we can achieve as an organization that have access to the resources that we do, for example. And the blue slide is kind of part of a kind of some material that we actually give to the young people, but it's also helpful as a very kind of quick overview of the whole process. And kind of explains how we're sort of taking information from the two aspects of the workshop and online, channeling that into kind of a development process and a service design process where we kind of make it real. And then from there, actually disseminate the service that the service design that we've now kind of come up with, and then follow that up as a very kind of real and tangible result of the process as well. So hopefully that's kind of all clear, and I'm happy to kind of answer questions on the specifics of how that might work as well.
Great, thank you, Amrita. Yeah.
Not a problem. So I was hoping now to maybe say a bit more about the kind of supporting young people in the college aspect, and how that's also an important way that we kind of put young people in the driving seat. And I have a couple of slides about the motivation around that as well. So if we could kind of go to the why around the college slide, that would be good.
Yeah, got that one. Yeah.
Perfect. So the motivation behind this is also very closely aligned to the motivation behind the consultation. So we do believe that kind of communities have potential to bring about positive change as a whole. So that's both as organizations working within communities, as community groups with a concern, as subsets of the community, such as young people, such as, you can break down communities in all kinds of ways all the time. But we think that there's definitely kind of almost a missed trick of actually harnessing this and having a focus on actually trying to support a process rather than offer a solution from the outset, if that makes sense. And our kind of our overall aim with this is to support and empower people to mobilize their assets and fulfill that potential as well. So just to be kind of just to go over maybe what the actual program will contain, if we could just skip ahead to the kind of what aspect of what will actually be offered and the kind of skills that will be developed through this. So it's kind of those four facets. So it's community development, community consultation, social research, and service design. So that's kind of the framework that we're working with. And from there, we hope that we will have groups of young people and volunteers that are kind of equipped to offer these skills to communities and organizations, and actually kind of implement some of the processes that they're kind of being taught about as well. Yeah, so I think the best thing would be to skip ahead to kind of the making connections slide, which kind of goes over the overall kind of aims of what we're doing, which is so, and how the kind of college idea pulls together as well. So overall, I think it's very, so the three facets are we're providing a supportive and inspiring learning environment for volunteers, so that the people that come to us to learn will be kind of developing a very kind of valuable and applicable sort of skill and feel for the sorts of work that they'd like to do. And they could then also have a real world environment. So we're also providing the community organizations that we've identified. And at the moment, we've got kind of 4 organizations in mind and on board, which is fantastic, with 4 very different kind of issues that they'd like to address, which is also really fantastic. And we kind of give them the skills, the expertise, and the kind of people resources that they might be lacking, being kind of smaller organizations, and we can kind of support them through the process of actually addressing the challenge, and then also identifying a kind of new way of addressing the problem. So that's the innovative new way of supporting the people that they work with as well. So yeah, that's kind of again, another overview of the People Know How College as well. And I'm conscious of time, and I don't want to talk for the full hour.
Okay, there's so much to tell us about, I guess, isn't there? There's just so much.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was hoping that after kind of all of that, it might be possible to kind of pose some questions, because I know that a lot of especially some of the other topics this morning, which have all been fantastic, have kind of different implications for practice, and I kind of understand that what we're dealing with is a bit kind of, it's a broader picture, and it would be really interesting to hear about different people's experiences. So one of the main questions we had was, and it's something that kind of emerges out of our work and something that we're hopefully trying to answer as well through all of our work, is basically, well, who should decide what kind of support services are available for young people, and also kind of how should they decide that. So we have our own kind of intuitions and kind of answers to this as well. But there's also other questions around what the ideal might be. Is there a difference between the ideal way of working with young people, both in kind of services themselves and encouraging participation and encouraging them to input, but also in about like kind of determining what actually gets kind of supported, what actually becomes real. But is there a necessary balance to be struck between that and what is realistic and kind of the time and the context that we live and work in as well. And also for this kind of more discussion part, I was hoping to bring in Glenn, who is one of our trustees, who will hopefully join me on screen quite soon as well.
So Glenn's been in the other room, I guess, listening
Yeah.
saying listening quietly. He's been active in the chat room, so thank you, Glenn. And hopefully he's going to be coming through to join you on the camera so that we can see him and make some responses. Yeah, and that very powerful question, let me just put it up on the screen for everybody to see. Who should decide what support services are available for young people and how, I guess. Yeah. Welcome, Glenn. Nice to have you.
John.
Yes, it's great.
I join you all online.
So you've been in the chat room, I guess, just making contact with everybody.
In the chat. This feels a bit more in the flesh, almost.
In the flesh, yes. It's great.
Even more virtual, or even less virtual, I'm not sure. But great to be able to join you here, and in voice. That's the best way to describe it.
Yeah. Would it be okay if you said something about your role at People Know How?
Absolutely. I'm one of the trustees with People Know How. We've got a fantastic group of trustees that have set up the organisation, and I've come on board more recently. I'm the secretary, and all of our trustees are very involved, have different roles and different things to do. So we're very, very volunteer-led. Amrita is our only paid member of staff. We've got a bit of an intern as well. That's just a kind of a short-term internship. We've had a number of interns over the last couple of years. And I think Amrita explained that's how she joined us first of all, was as an intern. But we're a new organisation, relatively small, but quite a growing band of volunteers that are really, really involved.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, Glenn. It's great to get a sense of the organisation and where you are in that. And part of today is kind of getting your ideas out and making relationships, making connections with other organisations, other people, perhaps. Yeah.
I think we've probably spent the last 18 months really thinking about what is People Know How, what do we want to do. So it hasn't been a sort of like a very sudden plan. It's been lots of deliberation, lots of thoughts of what to do. The consultation process that Amrita has spoken about was the first thing that we've embarked upon, and I'm really delighted to have the support of the big lottery to do that. Through their Invest in Ideas programme, and now more latterly this idea of a college, which we think is quite a unique idea. Not aware of anybody else doing it. Again, delighted to be partnering with Open University on this, and with Queen Margaret University, and they're really excited to be working with us and supporting us. So really, really grateful for their help as well.
Yeah. So you're gathering some support from some well-resourced organisations, I guess. Well, financially with the big lottery and
we've spent a lot. But when you start an organisation, that's exactly what it is. It's a new organisation. You have no resources. You have the contacts that you have amongst yourself and your other volunteers and trustees. So it's really just been a matter of kind of building on that. I say our trustees are very, very varied in their walks of life, the experience, the skills they bring to the board, and similarly our volunteers have been absolutely fantastic. We couldn't have done the things that we do without our volunteers, and our volunteers have brought ideas and have brought thinking and have asked lots of really fantastic questions, and cover many different parts of the globe. They're not all even from Scotland, so that's just really added to the richness of deciding what we want to do and being truly innovative and open to new ideas and ways of doing things.
Yeah, exciting, really. Yeah, thank you. Well, as you kind of give everybody a chance to think about, well, what might they want to know about your work, or maybe some people are thinking, is it replicable? They might want to be doing something similar in their part of the world, I guess. Sorry, Glenn, what you think?
When someone was putting in the chat room was saying that we are really open to building our networks, to making new connections with people, and that in this global age. I mean, you're showing us today, this global digital age, just what is possible. We are really keen to hear from people. And Rita was offering her email address at the end. Likewise, I can add my email address to that as well. We've got, I think, as an organisation, we're probably straddling a number of different things that are developing right now in our time. So the explosion online has so many applications that fit with this. The whole way that we're really looking at working with children, young people in a very different way. And the Scottish Government has really led on this in terms of putting children, young people right at the centre and wanting to know what they think, what are their ideas, how do we deliver services. I was hearing just yesterday of a nursery that was recruiting for new staff, and they had nursery children on the interview panel. It's like we would never have dreamt of doing that kind of thing years ago. So really, at the time, we're really involving children, young people. And I think the other movement that we're seeing really happen, which has probably, I think, been driven by this age of austerity, is that we're being far more innovative, and we're asking, far more searching questions. We're looking at, we have limited resources. How do we best use those? Are there things that we could be being smarter and more, using our ingenuity and using new technology, using ideas to develop new responses to social issues? And that's, so those are some of the things that are driving us. But I think we're not alone in that. They're driving other organisations as well, and we just want to be part of that, part of those movements.
Right. Well,
And you've got John.
Say
I'll
again?
be quiet a second. I hope we get some questions from people.
Yes. Well, there's a question in the chat room. Have you been surprised at what 13 to 15-year-olds want? So yeah.
Yeah, I should have said we're kind of in the middle of the process. So we're sort of just starting to kind of get a sense of a collective sort of opinion. Some of the interesting responses so far from kind of the stuff that we do have is that a lot of young people have picked up on the aspect of being responsible. And this, I think, is an interesting aspect of the actual policy because personally, in my opinion, it's one of the least kind of clear aspects of well-being. So this is part of the kind of the Scottish Government policy. It's one of the indicators, but it's also one of the least clear ones in terms of it. It doesn't seem like there's a consensus on what that means in young people's lives, and it's something that like a good proportion of the young people that we've spoken to have picked up on. That is surprising initially because it makes it so clear how the different ideas of what being responsible is and how that might be completely different for what adults think about young person's responsibility and what young people themselves think about that. So that's one of the issues that we're quite interested in kind of teasing out and getting more of a sense on as well.
We also ran a pilot, John, before we started this consultation, and some of that was just to actually prove to ourselves and to prospective funders that children actually wanted to be consulted, because that was an adult assumption that they'll want to be asked and they'll want to give their opinions. And overwhelmingly, they came back to us, and said, absolutely yes, we do want to be involved, we do want to give our opinions, and the thought of being able to actually influence what new services or new responses are to things that affect them, categorically, again, they wanted to be involved. There are other interesting things that came out of that as well, and Amrita might want to chip in, but one of those was around people's knowledge of services that were already there to help children and young people. And they were saying, we don't really know what's out there. Which came as quite a surprise because we're quite involved in that sector, working with children and young people, and you think we advertise these things really well, and some of them are really well-known charities nationally or locally, and they were really struggling to name any of them and say where they would go to get help, which in itself we thought, well, that raises an issue. Yeah. And there's things you want to add into that as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's the sort of thing that's quite interesting because, again, it might indicate a difference in language between the way it's discussed, so the way support is discussed and the way services are discussed in an adult context, so either by practitioners themselves or by the policy, and the way it might be understood by young people. So we found that if we ask the question, like kind of what charities, what services do you know of, and then kind of expound on it that way, we get to a place where a lot of our kind of respondents were kind of like, I don't really know of anything, like kind of as Glenn mentioned. But if you sort of reframe it and be like, okay, well, do you know about kind of this organization as an example? So if you picture like a really, really big kind of children's charity, and kind of go it that way, you're like, the responses would be, yes, yeah, we do know about that. That's interesting. It's not the same kind of understanding of it. And with kind of, it makes a lot more sense as well sometimes, just be like, well, do you know about their work? And it seems that sometimes the picture is a lot more of very specific things and very specific experiences, either within just the place that you live in, and knowing people and faces in that way. The understanding is not of it as kind of a charity or a service that I can always access. It's sort of a different kind of way of making sense of the things that are available, which it doesn't seem entirely kind of right that there's such a dissociation, because it means that you could get a lot of crosswires, especially if you're not taking the time to ask young people kinds of questions that really get at whether or not they do want to be accessing different kind of levels of support, or whether the basically, no, go ahead.
Well, it sounds really important in terms of services being able to communicate with children and young people, I guess, so that services can really be clear about how they're available. It could be easy to use that kind of communication or language, and how we as adults might more relate to that language or communication. That sounds like a really important finding. Yeah. And
in many ways, it seems so simple. We just tell young people that something exists. But actually, communication now is so fractured, and I think again we can think that they're all watching it online. They're all involved in these things digitally, so we'll tweet about it or Facebook it or we'll put it on a website. But they're not necessarily online, or they're not necessarily looking at those kind of things online, or they're not on those platforms. They're on different social media platforms that you and I have never even heard of, but that's the flavour of the month. That's the things that they're linking in with, right the way back through to whether it's a school teacher that knows about a service, or a GP, or another professional. Or so I think communication, in the modern age, you think, well, that surely is quite simple. We've got all these ways of communicating, but we can still miss children, young people, so easily.
Yeah, right. And that's the bit, I guess, that your organisation is really trying to catch. Like, let's try and miss young people and children less. Like, really hear or find a way to allow those voices to come through.
Yes, yeah. And those are some of the, sort of the founding principles that we really want to be listening to. As Amrita said, we've started with working with young people, but we anticipate that over time taking in other groups of people as well. But to really want to hear what people are saying, and to really listen. And again, I think Amrita was explaining how it's so easy to miss what people are saying. You think you know what they're saying, but actually we need to really check it out. And that, I guess, for us, being part of today and part of a conference about counselling is all about communication. So to hear from people that are listening to this presentation today or after today via email, via the chat room, would be really, really interesting to get their sense, because they're working with children and people on that one-to-one basis, quite different to how we're working with young people. So we're not experts. We're just trying a different way and seeing how it goes. I'm really happy to tell people the bits that go well, the bits that don't go so well. It's all about the learning process.
Yeah. So it's great that communication channel is open. And wondering, is there any ways that maybe that the group who's watching today, or perhaps someone who's watching the recording in the library, is there any ways that they might be able to support you or contribute to the work that you're doing? I know you're offering dialogue, but what could we do you think?
I think dialogue is so important, and to have the number of people that we've kind of built up in our network, and the numbers of ideas that you then get from people, and the support that you hope you might get, but actually then that you do get, has so. Often a conversation, you start a conversation, you don't always know where it's going to end or what's going to come out of that. So I just would really encourage people that if they have an interest, if they've got thoughts, questions, ideas, please get in touch. Do you know what I mean? It's always a bit of a joke, getting together for a coffee, but whenever I get together with somebody for a coffee, something always comes out of that. And that can happen. It could be a virtual coffee. Don't have to be in the same room drinking that coffee.
That's true.
But to have conversations and to have interaction, things always come out of it, is my experience. That can help mutually help us and help other people and other networks.
Absolutely. We've also got a Twitter feed that is dedicated just to both research that we want to share, but also ideas. And if it was on the bottom of the slides, so it's the @PKH Innovation channel. So if there are any feedback, any comments, any interest that way, that's kind of where we're kind of collecting all of that information, but also sharing it as well.
Fantastic.
So people have got amazing things that they've got themselves or they've come across elsewhere. If they share it with us at PKH Innovation, on Twitter, then we'll be happy to retweet those things. And we've been doing it for a few months now, and we've researched about 100, 150 different documents and research studies, and we've put those on that channel, and we really want to build that. And it's all focused around children and young people, and pieces of research, what we do know, and also ideas and ways of working, evidence-based working. And we just want to really build that and share it with everybody. It's not about kind of building it and then keeping it for ourselves. We want to build it and share it. So that's so much more valuable.
That sounds really generous, and it makes so much sense not to be doing the work over and over and again. You guys have done the research for these pieces of work. So generous that you're putting that out there. And if anybody in the group is on Twitter and maybe is following Saz, seems like everybody's following Saz, I guess Sandra will retweet your Twitter handle and vice versa, and that way we can kind of spread the research, I guess, spread your Twitter contact details. And I think what I've really enjoyed about your presentation and what I'm learning about your work, we live in a culture where we almost have to have the answers before we ask the questions. It's not quite as bad as that, but in terms of funding and what are you going to do and what's the solution to this, and the time and energy you guys are putting into just even how do we ask the questions, let's allow the answers to emerge. It's inspirational, really. I think it's a really powerful piece of work, and even if we don't do the same work, that spirit to allow the answers to emerge at the right time from the right people is just a really great thing to be doing.
Thank you, John. Yeah, absolutely. It's great to have that feedback, and in a sense, you have, I suppose, touched on the essence of what we've tried to make. We are trying to make people know how that we don't want to be having to justify and prove what we're doing to get funding. We want actually the funding, the resources to be about helping us to broaden that out, not to narrow it down. And so often people do get put in a situation where they have to prove and justify what they're doing to keep something being funded or resourced. We want to try and pull away from that and not be driven by those methods.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's that kind of saying, isn't there? If we just keep doing what we've always done, we'll just get the same thing. And it's so easy as organisations, as volunteer organisations, even just to be doing that. We need, as a society, as a species, people who can stretch out and lean into the unknown, I guess. And I guess you're really...
And be prepared to get it wrong, because we will get it wrong. And there are lots of things that we've looked at doing, considered doing, and they were blind alleys, they were cul-de-sacs. So we've not. It's not like these are the only two ideas we've had. We've had lots of ideas, lots of things we wanted to do, but really coming back and focusing on this consultation, and also the college as well that we're looking to develop. And we anticipate working with our first group of volunteers in this autumn. And then we've got 4 partner organisations that we'll be working with to run a consultation process of using all those skills that people will have learnt around community consultation, community building, social research, and to help people to design new innovative solutions to modern day issues. So that's what we've got our work cut out for ourselves, John. We've got a busy year ahead and many more after that, I think.
Yes, you certainly have. You really have. Well, our hour has come and gone so quickly. Thank you both so much. Amrita, we really appreciate your presentation, setting out the ideas so clearly, and thank you for being willing to do it in conversation.
Absolutely, yeah. No, thank you very much. That was really good.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, John, and thank you to Sandra as well. I know she's working away in the background there, making all the technology work. So a big shout out to Sandra as well. Thanks so much.
Doing a great job, and thank you for everyone who's been on the website live with us. I'm sure really appreciated what you've brought, and everyone that will watch in the library. So yeah, thank you both. And
which pass our contact details on to Sandra, and she can post those wherever.
Fantastic. So we'll get your email, Amrita, I guess, in the resource guide, the Twitter handle, website. And hopefully as the years roll on and you guys make progress, we can do more work together and just keep abreast of what's happening. That'd be lovely.
Yeah. thank you, John. We would love to be involved in the future.
Well,
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. Till the next time. Bye for now.
Bye.